So, all right. So, welcome everyone to the West Seattle Transportation Coalition's August virtual membership meeting, which is somewhat unusual for us. We don't typically meet in August, but we took off July this year, and with video recordings, we figured everyone who's on vacation can catch up with us later. I am Michael Taylor Judd. I am the chair of the West Seattle Transportation Coalition. And we are very happy to have you with us tonight. We have, as always, some really wonderful guests. We will do a little bit of quick business here at the top, and then we will get underway with a brief conversation and update with the Seattle Department of Transportation, as we've been doing on a regular basis. Just where we are about West Marginal Way, West Seattle Bridge repair updates. Actually, tonight we'll be talking a little bit about what's going on with some pedestrian bridges over here in our area. Following that, I believe we will have folks here from the 16th Avenue Southwest Safety Committee to talk with us about some concerns and challenges they have facing their community. And if not, Deb Barker, one of our board members, will be pinch hitting on that. And then by 7:15, we're going to jump into our conversation with Sound Transit to get status update on the ST3 project, budget challenges, planned release of the draft environmental impact statement in the fall, and whatever other wonderful things they have to share with us. And then we'll do a little bit more business and be wrapped up by 8:30 or perhaps a little sooner.
Yeah, it's fine.
If you have not been with us before, the West Seattle Transportation Coalition is a peninsula-wide organization working to address transportation and commuting challenges for the nearly 100,000 people living and working on the West Seattle Peninsula. And we do that by securing the support of residents, engaging with elected officials, partnering with government agencies to achieve outcomes and having them come and educate us as we're doing this evening. And we also engage regularly with businesses, other community organizations and neighborhood groups and individuals to get their feedback, such as having the 16th Avenue Safety Committee that's formed. Come and join us. Our goals currently are affordable and equitable transportation options, particularly in historically underserved neighborhoods, a transportation network that moves people and goods in an environmentally sustainable manner, and investments in transportation infrastructure to match Seattle's growth. In particular, our priorities this year have been, as you might imagine, focused on making sure that we have as much capacity as possible in the West Seattle Bridge Transportation Corridor, advocating for funding as much mobility as possible while the High Bridge is closed, continuing to support Sound Transit 3's light rail planning, and monitoring the Delridge Way and Rapid Ride H multimodal projects, which you'll hear a bit about tonight. I have our fellow board member, Kate Wells, here to help moderate, and I'm going to have her give a quick feedback about how to Zoom and chat.
Hi, everybody. I'll be taking over during the question and answer periods tonight. And there are a couple ways that you can ask a question if you have one. You can either raise your hand or you can type in the chat that you have a question and I can call on you. You can also type your question in the chat and I can read it. I prefer that you ask it yourself because I might miss some nuance, or if you ask it yourself, you'll have the chance to follow up if you don't get the answer you were asking the question for. So and I will try as best as I can to ask all the questions, but we usually have more questions than time. So back to you, Michael.
Thank you, Kate. And so let's get to introductions. We're not going to go around the horn and have everyone introduce themselves, but you should find that the chat window is now available. And we encourage you to go over there to share a little bit more about yourself with us. Name, pronouns, or any access needs. We'd love to know what neighborhood you're from. And then this month's question. As we're beginning to look towards the fall, unfortunately, and it's starting to get a little chilly out there. If you wouldn't mind sharing with us, are you already going back to the office, or have you been going to the office all along? Or is your employer one of the ones who's been talking about mandating everybody return to office, say September, October, November? Let us know. Are we expecting a big surge like some people fear, or are most people going to be able to continue what they're doing? Also, if you're newly joining us tonight and you did not receive a reminder in your email, we'd love to get you added to our West Seattle Transportation Coalition email list. You can send a private chat message to our board member, John Wright, and that way everybody doesn't need to see your email address and he can get you added to the list. And with that, some quick board minutes. I don't remember when Kate posted and sent it out. It was probably a while back since we didn't meet in July, but we do have previous meeting minutes from June to approve. And for folks who would like to check out previous meetings, you can go to either of those links to see us on YouTube or Facebook. I'd entertain a motion from a board member to approve previous meeting minutes. Uh-oh, do I have everybody locked down? Let's try that again.
I move we approve meeting minutes as distributed.
I'll
Thank you, Deb.
second it.
Thank you, Vicky. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. So moved. And then let's get underway. So with us tonight, we have for our conversation with Seattle Department of Transportation, we have familiar faces. We have Danielle Friedman and Madison Lincolnmeyer, who are both communications leads with SDOT. I believe Madison is showing the slides and you should have the ability to take over to share. Yes.
Hey, yes. I thought maybe we were going after sound transit. So I will share right this minute.
Okay.
Let's give me 1 second. And I have a cat who may mess this up for me. Okay, can you see my screen and just the one screen, or are you seeing two?
I'm not seeing anything yet.
Okay, 1 second. Okay, it says I can't screen share.
Oops.
Oh, yeah, let me try to do it. Let me see if I can.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you.
Okay. Oops. While this loads, I can just start. That's from the beginning. So I'm Danielle. I work at Seattle Department of Transportation. I work on outreach and engagement and communications with the West Seattle Bridge. And Madison Lincolnmeyer's here, and we're going to give, I'll give a short update on the what's happening at the West Seattle Bridge, and then Madison's going to talk about some pedestrian bridge projects. There's the agenda. So bridge updates. So most of you know this, just as a recap though, if anyone's just joining, the bridge has been closed since March 2020 after growing cracks were found in the structure during a routine inspection. Why did the bridge fail? Or why were there cracks in the bridge? It was likely because insufficient post-tensioning. That's the strands or cords that tighten the bridge and strengthen the concrete. The bridge was built to the standards of the day, and no specific defect or fault otherwise identified in the review of and design of the design and construction documents. So yeah, they learned a lot more about how to build these types of bridges in the past 40 years. So when the bridge had cracks, SDOT immediately set to work on the emergency stabilization, which halted the cracks from growing larger and it kept the bridge standing. So here's a timeline of where we are right now. So after the bridge closed, we did the stabilization to just keep the bridge standing. In November 2020, the mayor made a decision to repair the bridge as opposed to replacing it because she wanted the fastest route back on the bridge for people commuting and using it every day. And she also gave a directive to think about a replacement for the bridge down the road. So then in winter, we finished the first phase. This summer, we selected a contractor, and that's where we are right now. This fall, pretty soon, we're going to have the final repair design complete. And then starting in October or November, they're going to start the final repairs on the bridge, and the bridge will be reopened in mid-2022. So here's a slide that has a lot of things on it that I don't fully understand, but these are all the high bridge rehabilitation design work. There's raising work platforms, adding epoxy injections to cracks on the central and side spans, adding internal and external carbon fiber wrap, performing post-tensioning on the center and the tail spans, and stabilizing ground at Pier 18. So that's the work they're going to be doing.
Hey, Danielle, before you move, this is Deb Barker. Before you move to the next slide,
Yeah.
I'm on the West Seattle Bridge Community Task Force, and I just want to add to this. What they're doing with this drawing is nothing new. They have already done much of this to stabilize the bridge. So this is just more of the same. And the other thing to remember is that the bulk of all of this happens inside the bridge and we won't see much of it at all. But it's already gone on and it's working, and so that's the program.
Yes, thanks, Deb. Yeah, that's a great point. A lot of people are like, we never see people working on the bridge, you're not doing anything, but there's a lot of design work that happens, and then people do work inside the bridge, so you don't see them. So just heads up on that. Let me get back to my screen. Okay, so then there's also going to be some, oops, let me go back. Work on the low bridge to rehabilitate that. Just also, it's much smaller and not nearly as a big overhaul as the high bridge, but the low bridge will also need some fixing and strengthening just to make sure it could support as we move forward. And there might be some closures coming up to support that work in the future. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about Reconnect West Seattle and the West Marginal Way projects. So what we've done is we've put in 30 miles per hour speed limit signs and radar feedback signs, and installed a sidewalk next to the Duwamish Longhouse. And then coming up very soon, we're going to be putting in an interim signal and crosswalk there. We are doing improvements right now on West Marginal Way and Highland Parkway at that intersection to gain travel time efficiencies. And we're designing bike network connection and freight access driveway improvements. So you might have seen some of this work happening. This is an intersection that's often backed up. We're removing an island, putting in curb ramps, adding live video for monitoring traffic in real time, adding a second northbound lane, and adding accessible pedestrian signals. This work is happening now, and it should be done by the end of September. The work is mostly happening in the middle of the night on the weekend mornings to not be super impactful. And then the Duwamish Longhouse interim signal and crosswalk is expected to start any minute, and that's going to be weekend work only, and we'll still have one travel lane in each direction open. This is the design so far of the the bike lane on West Marginal Way. So you can see there's sidewalk and adequate space with a bicycle lane. There's room for passing and a wider buffer space and a Jersey barrier for protection while people are biking. There was a decision to build that bicycle lane and connection in 2022. There was, after the High Bridge opens, there was a lot of conversations, community input, conversations with stakeholders, and there was no consensus around building now, but there was more support for building after the reopening of the High Bridge. And some of the reasons around that were about making this bike corridor is it helps with safety, predictability, and it doesn't impact the travel time for freight access or motorists. Based on studies that ESTA has done, it reduces high-end speeding for that area along the corridor. And it helps achieve the Vision Zero goals for no serious or fatal injuries by 2030. It allows traffic to normalize prior to installation, because this corridor is used way more now during the bridge closure as part of the Detour route. And now I'll pass it over to Madison to talk about the Andover Pedestrian Bridge.
Thanks. Did we want to pause quick for West Seattle Bridge questions? Because I'm kind of switching over quick so we can stay on the topic if anyone had questions.
You know, chat is quiet and I don't see any raised hands right now.
Okay.
Okay, so Andover Pedestrian Bridge. Yeah, this side is good. This bridge is getting a seismic retrofit, so fancy way of saying it's being made stronger and safer if there is ever an earthquake here. This is the bridge you can see on the map. It goes over the on-ramp to the West Seattle Bridge, of course, empty now. Actually, a really nice view of Seattle. I was up there the other day for the first time, so it was cool to go up there. And we had planned for a seismic retrofit this fall and closed the bridge earlier, mid-August, due to reports of illegal activity. So that's why there was a lot of news and comments on this bridge. So we will be closed. It is closed now and it will remain closed through this work. It's going to take about 3 months and then we'll open it again. And I want to add to the closure on this bridge that's one of the things we are doing is to close the bridge. And they're also going to look at things like more fencing or lights, something like motion lights, something to do to help get people from going up on the bridge and going on the West Seattle high-rise bridge as well. The detour, it's a pretty long one. You'll go use South Avalon Way and 35th Avenue and Fauntleroy Way to get around the bridge. We looked at doing like temporary fencing on the West Seattle Bridge and decided not to do that for the steep slopes that go on each side of the bridge. And then the on-ramp for the West Seattle Bridge is also going to be used for construction activity on the High Bridge. So that's why this detour is taking people down and around instead of just going over the West Seattle Bridge while it's not being used for traffic right now. I think that was it on that one. Any questions?
Deb had her hand raised. Wait. Did you still have a question, Deb?
Yes, I did.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Hey, Madison. couple different things. I need clarification about the challenges that you were finding with the access. And also, what is SDOT doing then? That's not the only place to get onto the West Seattle Bridge over Andover. And I shouldn't even say this out loud, but having worked on a project where the statues are, I know that there are other gates and there are other access points northwest of this one. So what else is SDOT doing to deal with, what is the problem actually from this particular location, specific problem, and what is SDOT doing to remedy that, to eliminate that problem from other areas? Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I may need you to repeat your first question, but for the second one, it is an ongoing thing that we're doing. Some things I know we're looking at are more fencing and lights are a couple of them, but the other thing is when there's more construction vehicles using the bridge, we are expecting that to slow, hopefully a little, when people start seeing more activity there and more people using the bridge in and out. And then
So my first question was, your people are accessing the Fauntleroy on-ramp to, from the pedestrian bridge.
it's more at the entrance of, so there's the fence, you can kind of see it in the photo, but it's near that area where people are getting onto the high bridge. And then there was reports of illegal activity on the high bridge that we were hearing from the community.
Okay, so there's illegal activity on the high bridge. I mean, no one should even be on the high bridge, right?
Yes, illegal activity on the pedestrian bridge.
Oh, on the ped bridge.
So yeah,
Okay.
and then trespassing on the high bridge. But it's at that area where there's, I mean, it's a pretty tall fence, but people were still finding ways around it and onto the high bridge.
Well, and again, my point is that this is not the only place where you can get onto the Fauntleroy area. So to confirm, what are they doing with those fencing areas or those barrier areas? Or is this going to end up being a whole corridor of chain link fences, 8-foot tall chain link fencing until the bridge is opened? Or
Yeah. Oh, I don't know exactly. I'll have to get back to you on that one.
That'd be good. I just hadn't heard all the details, and this came up before or after the last bridge meeting. So yeah, I'm just interested just where exactly all the fencing is going to be going and the challenge areas, the addition. I want them to be aware of by the statues as well. So
yeah. Okay. Thank you, Deb. Thanks.
It's super steep there. Okay. Thank you.
Got a couple questions in chat and then some raised hands. So can we contact someone to add artwork to this project? And also, will the future bridge plan have an overhead enclosure?
Okay, so artwork, I do not know, but I will pass that along from Renee. And then it will not have an overhead enclosure. So the actual work it's in that photo too, on the east side of the bridge, strengthening that base there, and then the like joints on the part you walk on, strengthening those so that the bridge can move a little better. So it won't have an overhead enclosure.
Hi, Madison, it's Renee. Thanks for replying to my question. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I was I know you're making it seismic proof and good stuff like that, but just hearing, things, it seems like all around where we're going over interstates and stuff now, they have enclosures with the rock throwing and things that happen on bridges. And I love this bridge because it's quaint and old and it's in my neighborhood. But I just wondered if, maybe SDOT wanted to be a little bit proactive and investigate that, since the freeway will be reopening in 2022, to maybe think about a beautification way to make sort of maybe an enclosure just to protect cars. I don't know. I mean, if I could just raise my hand and you could add that to your notes and take it back to SDOT. Thank you.
And Renee, could you message me your phone or email and then
Sure, I'll do
follow up
that.
with you?
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, great. And then Michael and then John have questions.
Thank you. Yeah, we're hearing a lot of complaints around this medicine. A lot of folks are upset that it's being closed before the construction started. A lot of folks sort of asking questions about like, you know, what exactly is the nature of the project? Does it have to be closed 24/7 while the construction is happening? Or is it a sort of thing that could be, you know, access could be maintained when the workers aren't there? Because this is a pretty significant access way for pedestrians and bicyclists at a time when we're asking more people to become pedestrians and bicyclists. And you know, I mean, speaking for myself, it looks really it looks really interesting that we put out all these, you know, positive reasons for the bike project on West Marginal Way, and we say we're going to kick that out until after the bridge reopens to make all the car drivers happy. But we're perfectly fine to impact pedestrians and bicyclists over here because of course no car drivers are concerned with what's happening over here right now. And so I'm sort of curious why this can't wait until further along in the bridge repair process.
Are you asking waiting until like the high bridge?
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, at a time when we're asking a lot more people to walk and bike, at a time when, you know, folks are really restricted in some of the activities they can do in terms of exercise and things. I mean, a lot of people use this well before, you know, the current public health crisis, but a lot more people are out walking and biking because they can't do other things. And asking people, I mean, I see we've got planned detours, but those are really not adequate detours that really make up for what this bridge serves. And so it seems like maybe we could look at a little bit more about access. And in particular, people are upset about like, why are we closing it now when the construction isn't happening just because there's illegal activity? But it's not like people are jumping off the bridge. Closing off access to the bridge is not going to prevent anybody from getting down the sides down to the Fauntleroy Way expressway.
right. So yeah, closing it was, the decision was made, and then that was one thing we're trying. But like I said, looking at some other things for the Andover Bridge and getting onto the West Seattle Bridge, it will reopen as soon as the seismic retrofit is done. And so that bridge will be back open for people to use. I'll pass along the comment about the high bridge timing along with this one, although I'm pretty certain this one's going to move forward. If there are anyone on this call, neighbors, friends who want help planning ways to get around in the detour, let us know and we can help with that. And yeah, and I am sorry, I've gotten lots of emails too about the frustration over at closing, and construction should start. It will start in September. It should be early September, Deb. The date I got was the week of Labor Day. So it should be soon. And I will add the contact email in the chat too, so you can email that as well. There's that. Okay.
All right, John.
I just sort of feel like it's a contrast in two bridges. SDOT has been very deliberate with the outreach for the Delridge pedestrian bridge and soliciting community input before doing anything. And this bridge just willy-nilly closed because, you know, because SPD says so, and there's something bad happened. And so, you know, I find the way that SDOT has approached this closure has been completely unsatisfactory. I mean, it's just, when we find out with an article in the West Seattle blog that a non-trivial, a non-insignificant piece of transportation infrastructure has just been abruptly closed, and nobody really has an adequate answer why. I mean, it's like, listening to you say, I apologize for putting you on the spot, Madison, but the decision was made. It's like, well, that's not really a partnership with the community when that's what you hide behind. So it seems ridiculous the way this was handled, and wholly unsatisfactory. And I think SDOT, sometimes does better and can do better, and just wasn't pleased with the way SDOT handled this.
I definitely hear that, John, and we've heard it through the emails through both the Andover project and the West Seattle Bridge about.
And I guess too, I mean, it seems like that the community would feel this way is like, wholly predictable. So I don't know what SDOT was thinking when they did this, but it doesn't feel like they were.
Yeah, it was an attempt to stop the activity at the time, and then we're going to look at some other stuff too. But
well, I guess one could extrapolate that if any bit of transportation infrastructure on which something some activity is happening, if we just close it, I mean, that's what it feels like our mindset is, and that's ridiculous, right?
Yeah, I hear you, John. Thank you.
All right, I don't see anything more in chat or raised hands.
Michael's hand is still up.
Well, I think it's still up.
Is it still up or is it moving? Now it's down. Okay.
All right, onward, I guess.
Okay, Delridge. I'm in the chat really big. Okay, so Rapid Ride H-Line, I'm going to cover the Delridge Rapid Ride work quick, and then the Ped Bridge, so we can keep going. The Rapid Ride work is very close. I don't know if you've been on Delridge yet, walking, biking, driving, but it's getting really, really close. And majority of the work, especially the heavy concrete, paving, loud noise, big detours, that should all be done in 2021. And then right now we're doing a lot of the final touches of painting the new street lines, doing the landscaping, a lot of signal work. So every day just getting closer to being done on this project. Metro is still working, or started working this summer in White Center and Burien and some parts of Seattle. So you'll see that as well, but that work is continuing, and the H-Line is scheduled to open in 2022 for this project. That's my quick update on the Rapid Ride and related. So the Delridge pedestrian, I updated my slides a little, but the Delridge pedestrian bridge, we've been doing a lot of outreach on this. So right next to the community center and on the north end of Delridge, right by Youngstown, there's a pedestrian bridge, and we just built a new crossing. So you'll see here, the top photo is the bridge, and then just south of that is the new crossing. And the bridge is set for a seismic retrofit, just like the Andover Street Bridge. This is a bigger project, more expensive bridge for a seismic retrofit. But we know bridges have lots of community value, some historical, sentimental value to them. And we want to know if with the new crossing, how the community feels, if it's redundant to have the two there for crossing Delridge at the same location. The bridge is not accessible, so someone with a wheelchair would not be able to use that. But the crossing on Delridge is fully accessible. It's even got a little more updates to where it for people who are blind or people who do not hear. It's got some upgrades there too with the pedestrian signal there. So we can go to the next slide quick. And I hope you've all seen something on this one. And I'm going to drop a blog post in the chat too. But we're trying to get as much feedback right now as we can. We've met with Seattle Parks. We've met with Youngstown, and really trying to hear from as many people as we can, especially those traveling to that area or living and working in there. So you should be able to scan that code if you haven't taken the survey yet. It's fairly short. And then survey deadline, we're trying to get responses by August 30th. And we will be in person at the Delridge Community Center tomorrow, 2 to 4, and Sunday, 1 to 3. And you can email or call us to give feedback as well. Either any of that will do. And then the decision should be made sometime in the fall, with construction on either project in as early as the spring. And I think that's it on the Delridge Ped Bridge, if anyone has questions.
I don't see anything yet, although I've got a couple of questions while people get their thoughts together. Will or does the crossing, the surface crossing, have a leading pedestrian signal?
I should know this, and I don't. I'm sorry, Kate. I want to say yes because that's kind of the standard now, but I'll double check.
Okay.
And I was just there too.
And my bigger question is, I kind of imagine I know the reason why, but why isn't there a crosswalk on the north side of the intersection as well? Because this makes people have to cross two streets to get across Delridge.
I do not know, and I will ask that.
Okay.
On the north side where, Kate?
And crossing Delridge, there's only a crosswalk on the south side of the intersection.
Oh, all right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you have to cross twice to get across Delridge if you're coming from, say, Youngstown.
Got it. Okay. Probably because the ramp is there. Or
Probably because there are people turning left up to the college and they don't want to delay cars, would be my guess.
And it's duplicative because of the overpass or the pedestrian bridge. So.
Yeah, so if the pedestrian bridge goes away, it would be really nice to have a crosswalk on both sides of that intersection, north and south. Okay.
That's a good comment.
And, oh.
I think that was it for us. If anyone has other stat questions, otherwise I'm going to stick around for the other parts of the meeting.
Okay, I do not see anything else, so keep going, I guess. Oh, yeah.
I just want to say thank you for having us, and we took notes, and we'll bring this back to the project teams and share what you, the valuable feedback that you gave us. And we'll also reach back out with answers to your questions that we can answer tonight. So thank you for having us.
That's great.
Oh,
We like having you guys out as always. So
looks like we just got a raised hand too.
All right.
Do we have time for one more?
We do. I'm just going to point out up on the screen for folks who can't see the chat. I swapped in the email address there for the Andover Bridge, and then the email address and phone number for the Delridge project.
All right, Kay.
Yeah, hi,
You've got a
Madison.
question?
Yeah, I do. Hi, Madison. Sorry, I didn't know this was a venue for general questions, but as you know, SDOT decided with 1 hour notice to the community to suspend the construction on Highland Holden intersection. You did give us a courtesy email 1 hour before you dropped that publicly to the general public. So I'd like to just comment that that feels a little bit collaborative. I don't question the decision. I think it's a really smart decision and part of the agency, but someone earlier talked about doing good outreach to your community partners. And this community in Highland Park has been working really hard with SDOT for the past 6 months and even further back in regards to the impact of the detour routes and stuff on the neighborhood. And so we've been working really hard with you, and getting that really sort of short notice was really disappointing to some folks.
Okay.
And then we also want to know, so most people are in favor of it that I've spoke to. I think it's a good decision, but we are a little nervous that, you know, the funding will be taken away after that time. And we're also, I've heard concerns and questions about the public art project that's supposed to be going along with that. What's the process like that going to look like since the intersection itself is now delayed? Thank you.
Thank you, Kay.
Yeah, I want to say thank you for sharing that with us, Kay, as well. I think you know, if you're taking feedback notes, Madison, you know, it's a good moment to point out that, you know, community groups were pushing for years about some of those projects up there and not getting a lot of support from SDOT. And if we had had them in place before the bridge went down, we would have been better situated for the detours. Similarly, you know, our coalition here was talking for a couple of years about what did emergency planning look like, what were we doing. I mean, at the time we expected an earthquake was going to shut down the high bridge. But again, just pointing out, we were talking for a while, like, who's in charge of this? Where are the plans? Do we have these detour routes laid out? And everybody kind of saying, oh yeah, there's something, you know, on a shelf somewhere for, you know, emergency planning, but then an actual emergency happens and we spend weeks and weeks and weeks scrambling to think about what that looks like. And so maybe if there was a little bit more collaboration, we could have been a lot further along and a lot more ahead of the game than we ended up being.
I want to chime in, and I'm not piling on. I want to speak sternly to the people who are on holiday right now. And Danielle and Madison, I'm really glad that you came out to the West Seattle Transportation Coalition, and I appreciate that very much. But communications leads do not always have the answers, and it would have been I think this is one of the first times that we haven't had somebody with answers of that level at a WSTC meeting, and I'm disappointed by that. I know people need vacations. I get that, but it's a similar message to what everyone else has said. It just doesn't feel right, and disappointed to not have folks. Disappointed that you guys got put into a very difficult situation, Danielle and Madison. So thank you again.
Yes, thank you all.
And despite us
those
beating up on
comments.
you, thank you for being here. We always love seeing your faces.
No,
But
and we'll
hey,
be
Madison,
back.
do you happen to, or maybe Daniel, do you happen to know, because you're right, David's on vacation and Sarah, like everybody's sending these messages back. They're all over at Soap Lake or something, or out at Sun Lakes or something, water skiing. But so Highland Park, we're missing like a lot of school crossings signs that are worn off on 9th Avenue. They're just totally gone. And I don't know if that's part of the home zone work, of course, because David's out of town. So, and Sarah, but I mean, school's going to start in a week and we have some nice speed humps, but that thing that's spray paint onto the ground that says you're entering a school zone, and there's a flasher, we got a flashing thing, nothing. You can barely see, there's like one S showing up on 9th, like down by Trenton. So maybe someone could look in the work plan and see if there's a crew that's assigned to that.
Yeah, I think we need
someone needs to do a find it,
school.
fix it, or what?
We could send it to our Safe Routes to School project people, and if they'll know who we should contact, and we'll let them know about that. I think that could be a priority. Thanks for letting us know.
All right, I'm going to thank our guests and keep us moving forward because we're running behind on our agenda. and move us along here to the next item. Deb, do we have folks on the call, or are you going to be pinch hitting on this?
I'm going to be pinch hitting, and I'll make
All
it
right.
brief.
Very briefly for folks then, as an intro, there's a new neighborhood group that's formed called the 16th Avenue Southwest Safety Committee, that's been meeting and sending things to SDOT, reaching out to us as well. And they're very concerned about challenges facing their community due to the bridge detour disruptions and speeding vehicles up there by the college. If you'd like to learn more, those who are on Facebook watching us right now can go check out the page there on Facebook, 16th Avenue Southwest Safety Committee, which should be a pretty easy thing to remember. Deb, why don't you start talking a little bit about what they've lobbied you on while I bring up the map.
Absolutely. So I just want to say that since I go to a lot of meetings, back at the July District 1 Community Network meeting, this group came and made a pitch that they were having challenges with detour traffic, bridge detour traffic going through their neighborhood. And I reached out to Hang and to Braden and just tried to talk with them a little bit and find out more about what their issues were. And I'm speaking, reading from some of their documents tonight. We did have a meeting set up with SDOT that occurred in July. And that meeting was, July 22nd. And that included not only the 16th Avenue Traffic Safety Committee, it included representatives from the college, 2 representatives from the college. Newell Aldrich was there from Councilmember Herbold's office. And then there were, I believe, 4 SDOT representatives. The committee talked about, Michael, why don't you go back to the map if you could.
Okay.
So the committee shared that there are very few traffic calming measures on 16th Avenue Southwest corridor between Southwest Austin and Southwest Dawson Street. It's a 1.5 mile corridor lined with 200 single family and multifamily residential units, the South Seattle College, including a co-op preschool, the Stanislaw Elementary Safe School walking route, and it has 13 bus stops. This corridor provides local access to the South Seattle Chinese Garden, the South Seattle College Arboretum, Riverview Park, and the West Duwamish Greenbelt. So this map is showing all those different things that are along that corridor. The 16th Avenue Southwest roadway width is wide and it's straight, and that alignment invites excessive speeding, reckless passing, drag racing, and other behavior that's inconsistent with the adjacent residential and collegiate uses. These dangerous activities jeopardize the health and the safety of the residents, visitors, pedestrians, bicyclists, students, commuters, and the general public. So this was their point, that they have a challenging roadway in their in the middle of their life. And ironically, there were many things that that came up that they shared with SDOT. For instance, there is a huge chunk of mailboxes that are not in front of people's homes. They have to cross the street to get their mail. And I want to say it's like at least half of the corridor that you have to cross the street to get your mail. So while you've got all this speeding going on, you don't want to send your kid out to get the mail because it's not safe. So the 16th Avenue Southwest folks did a great job of laying out the different issues with all the different intersections. And this is not one of the dedicated bridge detour routes. That was pointed out to this group back in June when Heather Marks responded to some of their issues. But even though it's not a dedicated route, they are seeing, because of the Delridge construction, because of Rapid Ride, and because it's a nice, straight, quiet road, in quotes, road, that they are just getting heaped and heaps of cut through traffic that they hadn't had before. They don't see it slowing down because people have found such a great new route to go on, and they are very, very concerned. SDOT, at the meeting on the 22nd, SDOT listened to their concerns, the community concerns, and then did state that additional data, SDOT needs additional data to be able to implement any changes right now. So SDOT was going to be doing the rubber type road counters that was going to be happening in this month to gather the data, speeds, the types, the quantity, any freight sort of things. And SDOT is going to be meeting again once everyone gets back from vacation with the community to find out, to discuss some next steps. So that's kind of a nutshell, but this map was really useful that the community put together just with the different things going on. Also there was discussion about the fact that the college is going to be restarting on September 27th. Now, not all of the school is going to be doing in-person learning, but by the time, we still have the bridge that's out until the middle of next year, and there will be some folks there. So that is, the college is very concerned about the situation as well. And they are looking to have a lot more visibility, higher visibility on this corridor. Just as an aside, I dropped off some Vision Zero signs to share with them since I had some extras here from Morgan Junction. And this was like a quiet Saturday afternoon where I had like 3 cars being, sorry, the cars weren't being ridiculous. It was the drivers making the cars be ridiculous on this very chill street with crazy cars and crazy drivers. So it was a little scary, even though I didn't have to cross the street. It was just the situation was super unique and not friendly. So that's my pitch for the 16th Avenue Southwest Traffic Safety Committee.
Alrighty.
Any questions?
Thank you, Deb.
No questions. We are just
Actually, I'm curious, did SDOT ever do traffic studies along there before? So they have something to compare it to, like traffic counts and speed information?
I think that SDOT had, I'm trying to remember, and I think they talked about doing analysis further south, like south of Holden. And obviously that then starts getting into some of the areas for the other programs that are going on. But this corridor is really kind of isolated.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And Kay said something. There used to be a series of speed bumps north of the college. I think there were some new speed bumps that it had put in on the curvy part, but it's this lovely straightaway that is a bus route, as we know, that buses hate speed bumps. So that's one of the challenges, that's usually not that's kind of a go-to opportunity, but not in the case where there's a bus route. So it's a challenging one.
I do think that people have been lobbying for that area for a long time, and there should be data. SDOT should have data, because there were speed humps on the straightaway, but just north of the college, right where the new homes are.
Oh, right, with the new homes, yeah.
3 of them right there. I can't remember if they're still there or not, or if they kind of wore down.
Yeah.
Right after you go by the gardens.
Right.
But those don't just appear because nobody says anything. People have been worried about that. And then to the south of that, we certainly have people show up at Highland Park Action Committee meetings that are concerned about that and have been concerned for a long time.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know what SDOT has.
Well, and SDOT, they did, I remember them talking about some data, but they wanted new data. And it was pointed out to them that, the data may want to wait or retake the data after school starts, because summer and school time you're going to get different data. So, but the data there should be the monitors out now, and it'll be interesting to see what they say, because this has been going on for a while and definitely exacerbated with the bridge closure.
All right. Unfortunately, I'm going to keep us moving forward because we are behind schedule, but I'm sure we will keep an eye on this, and hopefully some of their folks will be able to check out the video and make sure that we covered their information as well as we could, and get back to us. So moving along, we have one more set of guests with us, at least one familiar face. Actually, I think two of them familiar faces. So a conversation with Sound Transit. A lot of folks are sort of, I don't want to say people are forgotten, because clearly nobody's forgotten about this big project, but it's been quiet for a while as we've gone through all the other craziness that's happening to us in the community. But we're happy to have several of the staff members back with us to give us a status on projects, budget challenges, and again, planned release of the draft environmental impact statement this fall. So we have Lita, and I always forget how to properly pronounce your last name, Lita.
That's okay. Sometimes I do too. It's Shaheen.
Shaheen, thank you. Who's our government community relations manager on the Central Corridor. We have Jason Hampton, who is the high capacity transit development manager. And we have Alexis Lair, who I believe is brand new for us, who is a community engagement specialist on the Central Corridor. And if you'd like to learn more, they've got a really easy open house website that you address you can remember there, wsblink.participate.online. And so take it away, Lita, or whoever will be sharing
It'll
slides.
be me. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, West Seattle Transportation Coalition, for having us back. It has been a little while, but it is a really great time to reconnect. And I'm going to go ahead and share some slides with you all. And let's see. All right, do you see oh, wait, let's resume it as I was trying to move screens. All right, you see my screen? Yes, all right, I got thumbs up. I'm gonna go full screen so everyone can see it. Well, all right, thank you for having us back. We're here to talk about the West Seattle and Ballard Link Extensions project as part of Sound Transit 3. Of course, you all probably know this, but we are one project or one set of projects, West Seattle Extension and the Ballard Extension, that are part of a broader system expansion effort all around the region, getting us to Everett and out to Bellevue and to Tacoma. And what's really exciting when you take a look at what's currently under construction and opening over the next few years, we've got Northgate Extension with 3 stations that are opening October 2nd. Next year with Hilltop Tacoma 6 stations. In 2023, getting out to Eastlink with 10 stations. And then in 2024, a very busy year, we will have 9 stations opening out to Linwood, Federal Way, and downtown Redmond. And sometimes it's nice to take a moment and notice all that's happening and opening in the next few years as we talk about a project that is more years down the road and currently in planning. We are in the middle of planning for the West Seattle and Ballard Link extensions. And as Michael mentioned, there's a really useful website to bookmark there, wsblink.participate.online, that will continue to update as new information is available and as we publish the draft environmental impact statement later this year that I'm going to talk a little bit more about. But just to orient folks to this project timeline, and this, while familiar, may look just a little bit new to some folks, as there's been a couple of changes. So we are still in the planning phase here that is in green from 2017 to 2023, and then design from 2023 to 2027, and construction for the West Seattle extension from 2026 to 2032. We're now looking at start of service 2032. So I know when we were last here, we talked quite a bit about the realignment process. The effort that our board was undergoing based on revenue challenges and cost challenges. And so just earlier this month, the board took action to realign the capital program with a plan that allows the agency to manage our agency-wide. So all the projects that you saw on a previous slide that are not in construction, we had a $6.5 billion affordability gap. So the board took action to address that while working to deliver as much of the plan as quickly as possible. Those projects that were in construction, not affected. And when we look at the West Seattle extension, the target date now for delivery and the affordable date that is there at 2032. It was 2030 before. So that is the change that you might see there. And for Ballard, we have 2037, 2039 with a target delivery date, what we're going for 2037 and planning for, but 2039 being the affordable delivery date if we're not able to make up for a gap in terms of affordability. So that is a quick update on realignment and the project timeline. And there is a lot more information at soundtransit.org/realignment. So that would be a good place to go. All right, zooming in on the planning phase, we have been with you and engaged with you quite a bit during that alternatives development phase. You see kind of grayed out on the left where we looked at a lot of alternatives and screened down, and the board identified what we would study in an environmental review period, which is what we are doing right now. We are expecting to publish a draft environmental impact statement this fall, followed by a public comment period, after which the board will confirm or modify preferred alternatives. In 2023, we'll publish the final environmental impact statement, and the board after that selects the project to be built and the record. We have a federal record of decision. So at that point is when we know what project we are in fact building. So what we are studying in this phase, and this has not changed since we've met with you some time ago, we've been working on looking at all of these alternatives in the draft DEIS equally. We are looking at preferred alternatives, I mentioned before, preferred alternatives with third-party funding, and DEIS alternatives there in blue. So you see all of those alternatives here in West Seattle in the different colors, and Jason's going to walk through those alternatives with you and introduce himself again for folks as we jump in. But preferred alternative, I just want to clarify, that is an indication of where the project is headed. It is not an obligation or a decision. That does not happen until 2023 when we have that record of decision. All right. So we're going to specifically focus in on a couple of segments here of the project, but you can see that for study purposes, we are looking at many segments along the corridor here, and we'll focus in on what we call the Delridge segment and the West Seattle Junction segment today. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jason to walk through these alternatives.
Thanks, Lita. Can you hear me? Perfect. Seeing a head nods there. So yeah, I'm Jason Hampton. I'm the high capacity transit development manager, leading the South segment, we call it, and that includes the Duwamish, Delridge, and West Seattle Junction segments. And in past meetings, we've gone over the alternatives in West Seattle, but it's been a while, so I'm just going to go through the Delridge and West Seattle Junction alternatives, but they should look pretty familiar to you. Next slide, please. Thanks. So this map provides an overview of the alternatives we're studying in Delridge. In Delridge, we're studying alternatives that can connect to both elevated and tunnel stations at Avalon and Alaska Junction. I'm going to walk through these one by one, but for the sake of time, I may go pretty quickly, but I'm happy to come back and we can talk a little bit more about something. Just note the slide number on the bottom left there, and we can easily jump back to that. And feel free to ask any questions as we go, or we can wait till the end of the alternatives and maybe pause and take some questions. The next slide, please. Thanks. So before I begin, I just want to kind of point out what we're showing on these slides. Each shows a map with the alternative over satellite imagery. And then on the right, we have a profile that illustrates the station height and the guideway height at certain locations of the alignment. And then below the profile, you'll see two different names. So in this case, we see the Dakota Street Station alternative. That's the name we use in the draft environmental impact statement. We also have a shorter name that we describe it. In this case, it's DEL 1A, or sometimes you'll hear me say DEL 1A. I'll try to say DEL just to make it more clear. And then as a reminder, these maps, profiles, and descriptions of all of the alternatives, more detailed descriptions than what I'll go through here, are on that link that Michael and Lita pointed out on slide 3. So the first alternative is the preferred alternative, the Dakota Street Station alternative, or DEL 1A. It would travel south along Delridge Way Southwest with an elevated station near Southwest Dakota Street before continuing west along the south side of Genesee on the north edge of the golf course. This alternative would connect to an elevated Avalon station. Next slide, please. Thanks. So the Dakota Street Station lower height alternative, or DEL 2A, would have a similar route through Delridge, but as can be seen on the profile on the right, the station height and the guideway along Genesee would be lower. So here we would have a 60-foot station height at Dakota Street Station. This alternative would connect to Tunnel, Avalon, and Alaska Junction stations. And then the location of the tunnel portal is also shown on both the profile and the map here, just as a point of reference there. And the next slide, please. Thanks. So the Dakota Street Station North Alignment option would have a similar route and station location as the preferred alternative, but the key difference here is the route would travel west on the north side of Genesee. You'll remember I mentioned the last one was on the south side, the north edge of the golf course. So that was just kind of a minor refinement to this alternative here. And the next slide, please. So this adds a second profile below it. So similar to the Dakota Street Station North Alignment option being for the taller option, we have a north alignment option for the tunnel option as well, the preferred alternative with third-party funding. You can see again, we have a station height of about 60 feet. And again, this would travel on the north side of Genesee. Next slide, please. So here we have an entirely different station location. So this alternative would travel south along Delridge Way, southwest, and it would have a station just north of Dakota Street, south of Andover. It would straddle Delridge Way, so we would have station access on both sides of Delridge Way. From there, the alignment would travel to the south, curving to the west, and it would travel west along the south side of Genesee, just north of the West Seattle Golf Course. And you can see here we have about a 90-foot station height at Delridge, and then the tallest point where Genesee dips down there by the golf course would be about 150 feet. And the next slide, please. Thanks. So similar to the Dakota Street Station alternatives having a lower height option, the Delridge Way Station alternative would also have a lower height alternative shown here on the bottom right profile. The Dakota Street Station would still be about the same height with both of these profiles, but the key difference here is as it travels along Genesee, the guideway's lower to the ground with a 50 feet height, and then it enters into a tunnel portal there near Avalon Way Southwest. Next slide, please. Yep. So we also have a third station location. It's a little bit further north. This is at the southeast corner of Nucor. You can see Nucor right there in the top middle of the map there. And this alternative would continue from it's the Andover Street Station alternative, we call it. It would continue from that Andover Street Station location to the west along Andover and following Yancey, and then it would curve south along Avalon Way into an elevated Avalon station. Here we have a station that's approximately 100 feet tall with the tallest point of the guideway before it starts to hit the hillside or go up the hill at about 130 feet. And one more here for Delridge. Thanks. So here as well, we have a lower height alternative. So Andover Street Station lower height, or DEL 6. And the station height here would be in a very similar location as the one I just described, would be about 80 feet with about 120 foot tall station. 90 feet with about 120 feet station, but tall guideway along Andover Way. And this station, though, would follow a similar route to the west along Andover. It would continue further west, and then it would go along the West Seattle Bridge connection to Fauntleroy Way. and it would enter into kind of an at grade or retain cut, so in a sort of ditch along the West Seattle Bridge there, and then it would be into a below grade station at Avalon, and I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the West Seattle Junction slides. So I'm not sure if we want to pause here for Delridge and take any questions, or if we should go into the West Seattle Junction segment and then talk about, or take questions.
Let's go ahead and take just John's question here. What are the technical issues or challenges with having guideways so high? Jason, do you have an answer for that now, or is that the kind of thing that we'll be able to have more information about when we have the draft EIS published later?
So those details would be in the draft EIS, and we're still pulling all of that together. So
yeah. There's some things you can't imagine. Of course, we've got a higher station height, so then you've got folks that are coming a little bit further to get up to the station, but there's a lot of information we will have in the draft EIS. And then Deb, I see your hand up, and I also see your question in the chat.
Oh, I've got a couple.
Okay, go for it.
So my question to you, Lita, was, do you know if the DEIS will include a future West Seattle High Bridge rebuild scenario?
Yeah. So, and Jason, you can jump in if you've got anything to add here, but we are not looking at a high bridge rebuild scenario. As we understand it, the city is doing their replacement planning work now. However, you can imagine we are planning in the same corridor and needing to be very coordinated in our planning efforts on what we're looking at. So our teams are meeting very regularly. So that's where we're at right now.
So maybe it'd be something more for the FEIS to reflect?
Potentially, if something is selected, that's certainly a potential, yeah. Want to add anything? Is that good? Okay.
No, yeah, that's good, thanks.
Another question then is, let's see, number 12 and 13, pages 12 and 13, which is the north side of Genesee. Is this the fear of the parks impacts result?
So Deb, you're asking, is this to avoid the park effect? Why we've got that? Yeah, Jason, this is an avoidance alternative for the park, right?
It would minimize the effect on the park. Yes, correct.
Yeah.
So it would minimize the effect on the golf course. But it would be on the north side of Genesee, which is so there would be takings along that corridor then, assumed?
It would be partly in the right of way and partly on the north side.
Yeah.
Partly in the, Jason, it's a 2-lane road.
That will be in the draft EIS, but yes, you can imagine there would be, you're having a trade-off there of park effects versus, effects in the neighborhood.
Okay, all right.
Is that right, Jason?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, it's just so darn narrow there. Let me just see. And yeah, those are my questions. Oh,
I do. Yeah, go ahead, Deb.
Jason, as you talked that the next slides that you have are for the junction area, but are you showing any slides tonight that show the Avalon station area?
Yes,
we will, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, Michael, good comment there, or comment in the chat, all for study. And so we'll be able to look at the trade-offs for all of these when we have the draft EIS published. So, all right, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, thanks. And that was a good segue into the West Seattle Junction segment, which includes 2 stations, an Avalon station and a station at Alaska Junction. Again, we're studying alternatives with both elevated and tunnel stations for both Avalon and Alaska Junction. And I will go through these similar to what we did before. Next slide, please. So here we have, I should note also, if we can go back to the last slide. So for Delridge, we had 1 pink line indicating a preferred alternative and 1 brown line with a preferred alternative with third-party funding. In the Alaska Junction and Avalon, we have 2 preferred alternatives in pink with different station options. And we have 2 preferred alternatives with third-party funding, and brown with different station options. So I'll have 2 slides for each of those. Thanks. We can go to the next one again. Thanks for jumping back. So here we have the elevated 41st, 42nd Avenue station. We've kind of named these after the station location at Alaska Junction because the Avalon station doesn't shift as much with these alternatives. We call this one WSJ1. And we'd have an elevated Avalon station in the vicinity of 35th Avenue Southwest, Southwest Genesee, and Avalon Way. Then from the station, we would continue to the west, following Fauntleroy Way, and then we would curve to the southwest with a southwest-oriented station in the vicinity of between 41st and 42nd, just south of Southwest Alaska Street. And that would be an elevated station at Alaska Junction of about 70 to 80 feet, and the same at Avalon. The next slide, please. So here we also show that 41st, 42nd Avenue station, but we've added the elevated Fauntleroy Way station alternative, or WSJ2. And this would have a similar station location at Avalon, but it would continue to follow Fauntleroy Way south to the west, to the further south, with a station straddling Southwest Alaska Street at Fauntleroy Way. Next slide, please. Okay, so the first preferred alternative with third-party funding, this is what we call the Tunnel 41st Avenue Station Alternative, or WSJ3A. On the map here, you can see the tunnel portal that I described in the Delridge segment before. The tunnel station would be in the vicinity of 35th Avenue Southwest, Southwest Avalon Way, and Fauntleroy Way Southwest. From the tunnel, it would continue to the west, curving to the south, with a tunnel station on 41st Avenue Southwest, straddling Southwest Alaska Street. Next slide, please. So here we show the 41st Avenue Station alternative, but we've added the Tunnel 42nd Avenue Station alternative, WSJ3B. Very similar station setup at Avalon, but we would continue further west before curving south with a tunnel station on 42nd Avenue Southwest, straddling Southwest Alaska Street. And next slide, please. We got 2 more. We're coming home here. So this is the short tunnel 41st Avenue Station alternative, and it connects to a tunnel station at Alaska Junction. I just want to point out the Avalon station is similar to the preferred alternative elevated Avalon station, but as we transfer or travel west and south, we enter into a tunnel portal in the vicinity of 38th Avenue Southwest, and then we continue tunneling to the southwest with a tunnel station at 41st Avenue Southwest and Southwest Alaska Street, with tunnel station entrances on both sides of Alaska. Then the next slide, please. Thanks. And so this adds one more other alternative to the Alaska Junction segment. And this is what we call the medium tunnel 41st Avenue Station alternative, or WSJ5. This one would connect to the Andover Street station that we talked about before, the Andover Street station lower height. So we would have a below grade station, very similar to what we have at the International District station, where it's kind of it's a covered station, but open top, so it wouldn't have ventilation like the tunnel stations downtown. And then it would continue to the west and south, entering a tunnel portal in the vicinity of 37th Avenue Southwest, continue in that tunnel and curve south with a tunnel station under Southwest Alaska Street on 41st Avenue Southwest. Guess it's a good thing that's my last slide because I need a drink of water. It's not my last slide, excuse me.
Nope, we still got.
Okay. No, I'm good. So now that we've described what we're studying as far as alternatives, I just want to go a little bit into the environmental review process. Thanks for jumping on that one there. And talk about what is in an EIS. So you'll hear the term DEIS and EIS interchangeably. You heard Deb say FEIS, which is final EIS. But right now we're doing the DEIS, which stands for Draft Environmental Impact Statement. And as you know, as it was pointed out, it really is a draft, and we do this first so that the public and the agencies will have an opportunity to provide comments and feedback on the analysis. And as stated on the slide, the purpose of the EIS is to provide agencies and the public an understanding of environmental consequences and assist in decision making. We look at a broad range of alternatives. We look at the scope, the potential impacts, and we even identify potential mitigation for those. And I think in the past, we've come in and talked about what's in an EIS. I'm just going to briefly go over it here again. And this too is on the Participate site that was mentioned by Michael and Lita. So at a high level, this is what's in an EIS. We look at three main aspects of the environment. We look at the transportation systems, we look at the natural environment, and we look at the built environment. And we look at this for the project and its final operational condition, but we also look at all of these things you'll see on the next slide during construction. And furthermore, we look at the cumulative effects of the project. Cumulative effects take into account potential effects of our project in conjunction with other planned projects, such as the West Seattle Bridge that Deb mentioned. And then for these topics, yeah, as I mentioned, we talk about construction and operations. So this is a big list, and I'm not going to read every item on here, but you can see there's many topics that are studied in EIS. We're looking at how the project would affect, things like transit service, looking at potential effects on routes during construction. So the Rapid Ride H line that was discussed earlier that's going to open next year, how would our construction on Delridge Way have effects on that? We consider geology and soils. We've been performing geotechnical borings. You may have seen some of our drill rigs in the neighborhoods. We're really trying to better understand the soil conditions. And it kind of goes back to that question about the engineering challenges that was asked earlier. This will help us better understand the engineering requirements for the project. We also look at visual effects from the project, and the DEIS will include visualizations at certain points along the project corridor to illustrate how the project will fit into the surrounding environment. And then lastly, I'll note we assess acquisitions, displacements, and relocations, as were mentioned before, along Genesee. And Alexis is going to talk a little bit more about that later. But first, next slide, please. I just want to point out that in addition to all of this, and really in a big way, we look at all of these topics through an equity lens, through our environmental justice analysis. You may know that we partnered with the city of Seattle in applying a racial equity toolkit to the project during the alternatives development phase, which was the previous phase of the project. And we're continuing that work in this phase. There's also a chapter in the draft EIS on environmental justice. And that really looks at the demographics of the corridor and the demographics that the project will serve. It evaluates whether the project disproportionately impacts communities of color or low income populations. It also considers the potential project benefits for these populations. And then finally, it documents what we hear from the community outreach efforts. Now I'm gonna pass it back to Lita and Alexis. Thanks.
Yeah, so we've got just a couple of questions that I think relate to the alternatives that maybe, Jason, you can think about as I go through the station planning, and we can come back to. And then Victoria will talk more about the public engagement and what we expect for the draft EIS publication a little bit later as well. And as we talk about the environmental, the draft environmental impact statement and what we're going to have at that time period, we'll just come back, Michael, to the comment or the question about what we'll have in terms of visuals. So hopefully we'll touch on a lot of the things that we here. And in the meantime, Jason, just take a look at the questions from Kate and from Deb, and we'll come back to those. Okay. All right, so station planning. We have been doing a lot of work on station planning since back in the alternatives development phase, and much earlier with this project and with our Sound Transit 3 projects than we have in the past. We're really trying to partner with agency partners, the community, so city, King County Metro, having community forums related to how stations can serve communities. And this is sort of an aspirational image. It's not, of course, any station, specific station or station plan for this project, but what we look to do is try to provide public spaces, integrate with development, accessible and visible entries, integrate with transit, other options so you can take the bus to get to light rail, convenient walking and biking connections. So really thinking about all the ways that people will access the station and then the station integrates with and supports the neighborhood. And we alone, we partner with, of course, our entities, but in particular the city of Seattle. And so this just gives you an idea of what our roles are when we think about station planning. Sound Transit, of course, is in charge of the routes and station locations, the light rail guideway and station design, and the environmental review effort. And our partners at the city, as you can see around, they're focused on community planning and station access, land use, street and right-of-way use. We do work together, plan together around these stations with communities, and then center racial equity together. And just to give you a visual of where those relationship or roles are focused, Sound Transit, you know, we own that station in terms of the focus around the design for the station itself. The city is in charge of the area, the broader 10-minute walk shed for the station area that's here in gold. And then where we overlap, and it's particularly critical that we are coordinating, is this, what we call the station context, the 1 to 3 block area around the station itself, where you sort of saw that integration in the previous slide. And what we're going to be doing, all of the engagement we have done in the previous phase of the project and in the neighborhood forums we had at the very beginning of this environmental review phase back in 2019, if folks remember, is we've been doing some agency work, taking that public feedback together, and we'll be sharing what we call a station context framework progress report. So it will share detailed station concepts and proposals for access, circulation, public space, and joint development, identifying opportunities and considerations for each alternative, and highlight potential issues for the community to weigh. So this will be shared out at the same time as the draft environmental impact statement as another supportive document to help in terms of visuals and thinking about these alternatives and reflecting the agency collaboration and what we've heard from the community so far, and be a place where we can continue to build on in future phases. All right, so I'm going to pause there and maybe we'll take some quick questions. And one of them, the short tunnel on slide 24 looks very shallow. Is it cut and covered or bored? Are you able to answer that at this time?
I can, yeah. So at this point, we haven't identified or selected construction methods, but I will point out it is not currently planned to be cut and cover. It would likely be a bored tunnel like you've seen us do on other projects, but we've also used what's called sequential excavation mining out in Bellevue. And so it's very similar where you have a tunnel portal, you remove the spoils from the end of the tunnel, but it's not cut and cover.
I do want to, yeah, okay, great. Okay, thanks. And then let's see, and then Deb's question, Jason, can you quantify how many of the Avalon stations are on Genesee versus Fauntleroy?
Yeah, so there in the DEIS, we'll have detailed drawings that show the exact locations for all of the stations, but a really good resource for that right now to see where the station entrances are the Participate site. You can click on the different station areas and it'll show where the station entrance locations are.
Jason, you just can't say there's 6 alternatives and 2 and 4, or, you know, 1 and 5. You don't have the answer off the top of your head.
I guess I'm trying to better understand the question based on, you know, these maps show the alternatives in the station locations. And for Avalon, they're, for the most part, east-west. You know, is your question, are they on Fauntleroy or are they on Genesee?
I'm just trying to get a quantification from you. It appears I'm seeing like one of them is on Fauntleroy and the other 6 are on Genesee. Does that sound right?
Yeah, we've got the one here and then Genesee.
Maybe 2 not on Genesee. And okay.
Yeah.
In the corridor. Okay, I understand now, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. And then Joyce, in terms of your question about being more specific of when you expect to release the results of the draft EIS this fall, I would love to be more specific about exactly when. I would certainly love to be able to say that we are expecting it to be later this fall. We do coordinate with our federal agency partner, the Federal Transit Administration. And so this is something that we're just continuing to work through. And when we are able to tell you a specific day, we will be happy to do that and certainly understand. But we are looking at later this fall. So I am able to say that. Okay, and then Alexis, do you want to walk us through that? So we just transitioning from station planning and whatnot. We're trying to give you today all the information that may be helpful as we're getting closer to the draft EIS publication. And of course, one thing that folks have asked us about over time is just the property acquisition process and timing, and with all that's been going on with realignment and so forth, we thought it would be good to just ground folks in this timeline and process briefly as well, where we are right now. Alexis?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm new for you all, but I typically work on the Ballard link extension to the north segment, but I'm here filling in today. So thank you for having me. And thanks, Lita, for that sort of introduction into this portion of the presentation. After I talk about kind of the property acquisition process and timeline, I'll talk a little bit more about community engagement and maybe some of the other questions in the chat could get answered too. Here's a timeline. And it's a similar timeline that Lita discussed earlier in the presentation, but it's sort of framed around, potentially effective property owner engagement. And for those of you not familiar, potentially effective property owner really means that any property that is affected by one or more of the alternatives. And as a reminder, they're potentially affected. So there's no decision point to purchase properties at this time, but they're near or within the vicinity of an alternative. And so you'll see right here, kind of the blue line. This is where we are right now. So we're before the draft EIS publication, and that's when we'll notify potentially affected property owners in writing. And the intent is to do that before the draft EIS is released, because our goal is really to engage potentially affected property owners early in the process so that they're aware of the project, its timeline, and important upcoming milestones. Next slide. As you'll see here, and as Lita talked about, we'll publish the draft EIS later this year for our agency partners and for the public to review and provide that comment. And then of course, once we receive those comments, the board will take the analysis of the draft EIS and the public and agency comments and then confirm or modify that preferred alternative. And again, this is not a decision point for potentially affected property owners. This is just still part of the process. Next slide. Then you'll see in red at the bottom, as we'll enter in the final EIS phase of the environmental review period. And so once the board confirms or modifies that preferred alternative, we'll begin preparing that final EIS, right? So it won't be until 2023 when we publish the final EIS and the board selects the project to be built. But more specifically, next slide. Once we enter into final design, which is expected to occur in between around 2023 to 2027, that's when we'll identify what types of property rights will be needed. So that's full or partial acquisitions. And once we know the properties that will be needed, the board will authorize properties to purchase. And you'll see here, Sound Transit will prepare an appraisal to determine the fair market value of the property needed for the project. We also provide relocation assistance to people and businesses displaced by the project. So this includes tenants and residents, and it includes referrals to comparable properties and payments for moving costs. And I think something that I think this is an example of that is that, staff, we are to be available to support property owners and tenants throughout this process. And I just want to do a quick reminder that, where we are early in the process is we are up in that kind of that light blue area. So we're kind of early in that planning phase. And again, our hope is to develop and maintain relationships with potentially affected property owners and provide opportunities for them to stay engaged on this project. Next slide. All right, our last few slides will really focus on the community engagement kind of now in the near term, and once the draft EIS is published. So again, this is a similar timeline graphic that Lita sort of spoke to earlier, where you can see kind of on the top line in the darker blue, the environmental review period, which is what we're in, and then concurrently kind of our community engagement timeline on the bottom. And you'll see there's a timeline at the very top, right? So we're in the end, towards the end of summer, sadly, and that's where we are. So you'll see in the fall is when we publish that draft EIS, which is followed by public comment. And then in 2022, the board will confirm or modify that preferred alternative and enter in the final EIS phase. All right, so our current engagement is really focusing on preparing the community for the upcoming draft EIS publication. Several different activities that we're doing right now. We already talked about the last one around outreach to property owners. But the others include, and as I think Lita and Jason both mentioned, our online engagement platform. That is really, just to reiterate, that's a big resource that we will be continuing to update as we have more resources to help folks prepare for that draft EIS comment period. We'll continue to do community briefings like this virtually for now, and maybe hybrid approaches later. And similarly, fairs and festivals and tabling, we will continue to do. We have some sort of lined up for this month and next month, but we need to maintain kind of those CDC guideline. Those CDC guidelines are on COVID-19 protocols. So, and then the fourth bullet is around our equitable engagement approaches. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that before we conclude the presentation. Next slide. So our big focus for equitable engagement is really thinking about capacity building and audience expansion. So focusing on the racial equity toolkit neighborhoods of the CID and the Delridge corridor, which really means for the Delridge corridor, it really means the neighborhoods that extend kind of in the Delridge area and south of Delridge, all the way down to White Center. And these neighborhoods that are in kind of that West Seattle area, really we're thinking about how they are going to integrate with the stations kind of in the northern part of West Seattle. And the image here really shows the kind of integration of that future rapid ride H line into our, Delridge alternatives, station alternatives. So our two major strategies include exploring partnerships with community-based organizations. And then the second bullet, which I want to talk a little bit more about today, is working with the City of Seattle's Department of Neighborhoods Community Liaison Program. We worked with community liaisons in the first phase, and we're expanding on those efforts now. And for those who may not be familiar, community liaisons, they're kind of like community advocates who kind of live, work, reside, hang out in different neighborhoods all around the Seattle area. And they often have connections to community groups who are underserved or are harder to reach. And it's been a really beneficial thing for Sound Transit and for the City of Seattle to be able to have connections with community members like this. So we're working with 11 community liaisons, and 7 of them are really connected to the communities in the Delridge corridor. So we're thinking of White Center, we're thinking of High Point, we're thinking of Delridge and South Delridge. And they're working with us to expand our project audience and working to find meaningful connections with this project. Some of the engagement activities we've done in the past include listening sessions with residents, door-to-door business outreach, and tabling at community centers or festivals and fairs. Next slide. So building off of all the different activities I talked about before, all of that is to build up to the kind of upcoming engagement is, once that draft EIS is published, and we're working to collect that public feedback. So when we think about that public comment process, we're working to develop materials to help the public understand this very kind of large project and a very sometimes complicated, maybe not sometimes, public process. And so our goal is to really try to find accessible, meaningful and engaging ways to get the public to kind of engage with us around this comment period. So really thinking about what your input can do, providing that public comment for us can help shape what this project looks like in your community. It really helps inform the Sound Transit Board of what is important to you around the different alternatives. And then, and ultimately it helps determine which project will be built. Next slide. In terms of accessibility, you'll be able to share your comments on the draft DEIS through a variety of formats, including online, phone, mail, in-person, and or virtual meetings. We potentially could do in-person activities, but it's really contingent upon that state and federal guidelines when the draft DEIS is released. For those who all were part of the scoping, which was the previous kind of public comment period in our last phase, it'll be very similar, but with more virtual opportunities. And then of course, we'll have comments can come in any language. Next slide, please. So what does a comment look like? We created something called a community comment guide, which provides support for the public's need for accessible ways to contribute to this project. So we have a couple tips on how best to organize a comment in the draft DEIS. And some of them are here, but I think really we kind of want to have people focus on a specific problem or issue that they care about. And so the draft DEIS will have a lot of information, and the more specific your comments are, the better understanding we have to know about what's important for you. We also encourage you to share your opinion on the project and include why you feel that way. So you tell us what you think and state what you support. So what you disagree with and other helpful solutions to problems. And then finally, support your comments with these details, explanations, and references. So showing your work and providing additional information will help us kind of make our final EIS better. And then finally, what happens after you comment? So once that comment period ends, Sound Transit staff will begin preparing a very meticulous summary that gives an indication of the magnitude of comments received on a particular topic. The Sound Transit Board will receive the comment summary as well as verbatim comments, and public feedback will also be shared with our federal partner, the Federal Transit Administration. And then the Sound Transit Board, with that analysis and comment, will again, as we've talked about, confirm or modify, which will then give direction to Sound Transit staff who will work to prepare the final EIS and respond to the comments received. And that concludes my presentation. I saw a lot of messages in the chat, but I'll let Lita facilitate that from here.
Sure. All right. So just looking through this, the comment period is how long? As Michael mentions, it is 45 days. There have been requests to extend that, and we are tracking that, and we'll let folks know later on, but 45 days is what you can plan on right now. And then in terms of relocation, so Alexis, there's a question in the chat. When you talk about relocation for residents and businesses, is that relocation in West Seattle?
Yes, when we talk about the different, when we talk about the project corridor, our real property staff do is they look for comparable properties. So, and I think they'll do the best they can to make sure that they find, places or locations if someone wants to stay within a certain geographical area. Of course, these things can't be guaranteed, but I think that, our real property staff is really working to kind of find the best comparable property that a property owner wants.
And just to build on that too, if there are, any questions, we're very interested in continuing to engage property owners on whichever level makes sense for that property owner. And we will have, of course, when later in the year, we'll have group sessions. We also can meet together. We can come back to this group, bring our real property expert, whatever is helpful to help folks understand kind of how this works and where we're going from here. So just wanted to put that out there as well. Any other questions that we missed? I think, Michael, a note on visualizations, and we will build on those visualizations we had before. And as we are preparing, or as we publish the draft EIS, there will be more visuals for folks to look at that are in line with where we are in terms of design. So you can have that to look forward to. I see hands up. Okay, it's focused on the chat. Deb and then Michael is who I see. If I missed anyone, please let me know.
Deb Barker here again. I just want to thank Sound Transit for meeting with the potentially impacted residents of the 32nd Avenue, Genesee-ish area. I know that your outreach to them came late, but it was very welcome. And I especially appreciated you bringing out the real estate folks to give very what I felt was as clear cut and honest answers as they could. I know that people really appreciated that, and I'm sure I'll get invited to the next time you come out. So thanks for that.
And thanks for that connection too. We really appreciated it. Michael.
Yes, and I wanted to ask, we've got to wrap up here pretty quick. But what can, as a community organization with a lot of folks who are really deeply interested in detail,
Yes.
But also wanting to make sure that lots more people get involved and get educated. What, are there ways that we can be working with you to help get the word out, maybe set up some fun kinds of community things outside of the official public meetings? I mean, we're kind of going into bad weather times again. But I know folks in the past have enjoyed, community groups have done walking events along the corridor, or, it helps sometimes to actually stand there, to stand in the station context, or some opportunities, to, once we have actual draft EIS stuff for someone to sort of, maybe there should be a walk or something along the edge of the golf course there to talk about what are the real impacts we're talking about. What does, is it 4A, 8A? I'm forgetting what the federal designation is right now. Thank you, 4F. There are folks who really sort of love to argue that sort of thing, and so are there ways that we can set up some smaller events and help you publicize and things like that, because we're here and we want to be involved.
Thank you, Michael, and I'm glad I have Alexis here too. We're really trying to think creatively about the comment period and understanding the environment that we're in, and definitely appreciate organizations like the West Seattle Transportation Coalition. And I know many of you wear so many hats helping to get the word out, both, as we get towards the draft publication. I know that you all have shared out our online open house before in the past, and that's been very helpful. I think we'll want to sort of push that drumbeat, and then any opportunities we can think creatively. I'm happy to, I know I'm talking to Deb soon, and Michael would be happy to chat. We can even, if there are ideas here, we're very interested in them, and thinking about kind of the full corridor and the breadth of what we can do and how to sort of fill in gaps and drum up interest is certainly something we're interested in. So thank you.
All right. Unfortunately, I want to wrap us up because we're coming into 8:23 and we have a couple more things to do here.
Michael, I'm just jumping in. It's Deb. I see that Hang was able to show up from 16th Avenue.
All right.
If you can take a moment, that'd be great.
So let's thank our Sound Transit guests.
Thanks for having us. Good to see you.
Again, folks, if you want to check things out, go to the online open house. I'll flash that up here again in a second. And you guys are obviously welcome back anytime.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So again, here at the bottom, wsblink.participate.online. All sorts of information and things, and you can always check out this meeting afterwards on YouTube or Facebook to look at those slides again as well. So thanks a lot. I want to keep us moving here so we can ignore all the timing on here, which is fine. I do want to, before we come up on 8:30, as we've talked about in the past, we have, after we elect and re-elect officers in June, board members in June, board members get together in July or August and elect board officers. And so I just want to let everybody know that the board did get together in July for a board meeting, even though we didn't have a membership meeting. And it was decided that all officer terms, everybody stood for re-election. and everybody was extended another year. And so I will be continuing into 2022 as the chair. Marty Westerman will be continuing as vice chair. Larry Weimer as our man in charge of the dollars, which we don't have a whole lot of, but if you want to send them to us, he'll be in charge of them. And then Kate, my faithful moderator here, will be continuing on as our secretary. We are also planning on having a board retreat sometime coming up here in September. We're still trying to figure out how we all feel and whether we can do something maybe in person or not. But if you're not a board member and you have either particular issues that you want us to be considering and talking about, or for some reason you really would love to come and participate in part of our retreat, do drop us an email or a comment on Facebook and let us know. And we certainly don't mind having a couple of guests come along sometimes. And that is all I had. Was there any other old or new business that needed to be brought up? All right, hearing none and nothing hanging out there in chat we need to worry about. Nope. Then I understand, thank you, Deb, that we have a couple folks from 16th Avenue who were able to join us at the last moment.
Hi, Hang, it's Deb Barker. I just want you to know that I shared your program and your concerns with the group, read your outline, showed your map, said that SDOT was studying, doing some analysis, but and they'd be setting up a new meeting. But I wanted folks to hear from you. And you're muted.
Thanks,
There
Deb. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you all for having me. Yeah, so we've been having some escalating safety and speeding concerns on 16th Avenue Southwest, particularly between Austin Southwest and Dawson Southwest. So this stretch of 16th Avenue Southwest has been historically just missed, neglected in various planning and advocacy efforts, but because of the where it lies, 16th Avenue is the division line between Riverview neighborhood, right, the edge of Riverview to the east, and then Puget Ridge to the west. And also Highland Park neighborhood does a lot of advocacy, which includes 16th Avenue, but only as far north as I think Austin or Holden, somewhere around there. So this stretch of 16th has been just forgotten over the years. So speeding has always been a concern on this street because it's 1.5 mile of a very straight, kind of flat, unobstructed street with no traffic coming. So, and this problem has been exacerbated since the West Seattle Bridge has been under construction, because this street has become in an informal detour. The traffic flow and traffic, missing the exact word here, but a lot more cars on this street, and they're driving very fast, increasingly fast, up to 50, 60 miles an hour. So neighbors have been very concerned. So we've gotten together and formed the 16th Avenue Southwest Safety Committee to advocate for safety along 16th Avenue, this very specific stretch, which has been just forgotten in all the other advocacy efforts. And for now, we are focusing on traffic safety, which is a concern on many of our minds. And we've had some successes so far. Councilmember Herbold has acknowledged us. She's mentioned our committee and our concerns at a recent Traffic and Utilities Committee meeting, I believe. And she has met with us a couple of times, one of which along with SDOT. And SDOT has agreed to implement a number of traffic calming measures, including 7 speed cushions along that stretch that I mentioned, and also flashing beacons on the intersection of Myrtle and 16th, which is a major cross street to Stanislaus Elementary School. So when we met with them last month, SDOT, what we wanted to impress upon them is we need a long-term comprehensive traffic management plan. So we hope that this is the very beginning of a very long-term relationship to help us continue to monitor and address various concerns that may come up. And I may mention that our committee includes over 24 families along 16th Avenue, as well as Stanislaus Elementary PTA and West Seattle College. We're all members of this committee. Any thoughts or questions? Oh, let me add, I also recently attended the micro community policing meeting with SPD and to talk about enforcement of the speed limit as part of that comprehensive plan. When I first met with SPD to discuss enforcement, the initial immediate response was, we're understaffed, sorry, can't help. But in this micro community policing meeting, we had a number of officers and sergeants and leaders in that meeting, and they were actually quite engaged with the issue. In fact, I think we spent 50% of that meeting discussing traffic safety on 16. In fact, if you look at I would encourage you, if you haven't, to look at the survey results from the MPCC, because West Seattle is very unique in the safety concerns among all of Seattle. Only West Seattle, both the West Precinct and the Southwest Precinct, identify among the top 5 safety concerns, with traffic safety as one of them, yep, which is unique to West Seattle. Anyway, so the SPD has expressed various kind of ideas about how to collaborate with us to help promote traffic safety and possibly some creative ways to enforce the speed limit. So I hope, again, this is the beginning of a long-term relationship with SDOT and SBC and various other community institutions to help promote safety for all of us on 16.
We would love to definitely have you guys, if there's anything we can do to be supporting you, and we always love when new community groups are interested in transportation stuff, and you're absolutely right, particularly even for those of us, I'm a long time in North Delridge, and for those of us east of 35th, for years now, one of the top concerns over and over every year with the police is speeding down our arterials. So
thank you very much.
I have I feel like in the past, I have heard that the police department would lend out radar guns to neighbors. I mean, obviously it's not a scientific thing, but it could get, if you could actually record people and their speeds, and that just would give you some evidence that, see, this is really, really, truly a problem. Because SDOT is doing their measurements, but it doesn't hurt to have more, and just might help get your neighbors together. Has anybody ever heard that? I feel like I heard it at one of my community meetings years ago that those radar guns were available.
They have in the past. Typically, it's been around neighborhood groups lobbying for speed bumps. Although I guess there are speed bumps on 16, so that's probably how they got them on the north end of 16th Avenue. But so that's typically, at least in my experience, where I've heard about that happening. But I think, I think SDOT and SPD are well aware of the traffic and speeding issues on 16th. We just need to sort of lean on them if we want some more things done. And certainly, when the neighborhood is there and supportive of traffic calming measures, that's always a good step in the right direction. So.
Yes, thank you, Kate. Yeah, the data is very important, and SDOT has actually done a number of speed studies since the committee has been formed.
Oh,
And they know
great.
it's a problem. That's why they've agreed to implement some measures.
Okay, sometimes they do studies for a little window of time and you don't catch the right time.
Exactly, in the wrong place, and we told them that.
Yeah.
So that's why they did it again in the places that we recommended.
Yeah.
And they're going to
Great.
have to do them again when school starts too, because that'll be a whole
Yeah.
different number.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Are there any lights? I have not driven down there for like years, so no lights. Yeah.
Nothing between Austin and Dawson, 1.5 mile. No light, no stop signs,
Yeah.
no nothing.
And it's a straightaway because you can
Oh,
see,
yeah.
you can see from one end to the t'other. So you can, it's a fantastic street to just go full out, but it's terrifying for the people who live there.
Yep.
There's a lot of people wandering up there now because of the work on Delridge and the traffic on West Marginal Way. There's a lot more people trying to cut up there and who don't realize, I don't know if it will show my cursor here or not, but if you look right at the top, right under the yellow banner where it says traffic safety project, a lot of folk, you know, much like people suddenly discovered whole new parts of West Seattle that they'd never gone to with the detours. There's a whole lot of people who I don't think realize what happens on the north end of 16th Avenue, unless you're those of us who travel through here for various reasons. So there are a whole lot of people who want to go speeding by and then suddenly get to the top there and there's, you know, a curve that you got to slow down to like 20 miles an hour or you're going to end up in someone's living room. And then it curves and winds very slowly up there. So a lot of people, I think, imagine that this will be a faster way to get places, but if they're trying to use this to actually get all the way up into the north, you know, up to Admiral and other parts to the north, like that's not going to be the case once they get up there. So
Absolutely, the traffic volume has increased by many times.
So if folks want to find out how to get a hold of you or other people in your neighborhood are like, I didn't know that this existed yet. We pointed out that you've got a Facebook page. Is there any other great ways for people to reach you or?
Actually, let me just type in my email to just one person, but let me type it to you.
And it'd be great if we could schedule you guys to come back in, are we having meetings in September?
Yes.
Or something? Yeah, it'd be good to get updates. Since I quickly threw this update together tonight since we had a little bit of miscommunication, but would love to have you back for an update because I know SDOT is a lot of folks are on holiday and they have some potential deliverables to share. Let's hope they do.
Well, thank you so much for your warm welcome and your willingness to support us. Yeah, if I have any updates to share, I'll be happy to join and share with you all.
Thanks. Keep us in the loop.
Appreciate the support.
All right.
Thanks for coming, Hang.
With that, we are at 8:38. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'm unmuted, so I'll say I move adjourn.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. We'll see everybody next month.
All right.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.